and I'll be addressing several questions today. One of those are about focus, perhaps, because somebody has watched the video about focus and really enjoyed, and asks, I want your opinion about a related issue I'm experiencing. Over the last few months, my focus has been shifting to the thought that I will accidentally hurt my body. The thoughts come in variations, but they are consistent and produce fear. Ironically, the fear comes from the knowledge that the fear helps manifest thoughts. So I fear the thoughts more and the cycle repeats itself. Help. It's a very interesting question to encounter with, because thought of hurting the body and this already recognized fear rising around that thought, and the fear is recognized to be acknowledged as well, that it produces more fear just by knowing that fearful thoughts produces a manifestation of those thoughts. So now how to really deal with that kind of unreasonable fear for thought of hurting your body. And investigation is necessary into finding out where these thoughts started and what caused the focus to shift towards that direction. It may have that something had happened and it brought your thoughts to identify with an experience where you did actually hurt your body, and right now there is reference to that space as if it's going to happen again. And this thoughts production is always going to continue as long as the investigation is not carried out. So initially, instead of trying to really change anything and shift your focus out of that thought into another thought or anything, it's much more important to really come to recognize what caused you to have that thought of being afraid to hurt your body. Because actually, body itself has no fear to be hurt unless it is already conditioned by some sort of past experience. So let's take it into example. If you have not experienced fire, how do you know that the body will get hurt from fire? You must have eventually touched the fire, something close to it, which produces bodily response to be afraid of painful experience of fire. And that may follow for any other experience which relates to pain of the body. But now, if the thought is just a fear of hurting the body, without any clarity what produces that fear, it will always come in cycles and remain in different variations, and it will stimulate itself to produce the reality and manifestation of that kind of experience. But most importantly is to really carry out the investigation and see where would that thought come from, and try to go to the very beginning of it, the origin of the thought, and why am I afraid of hurting my body? Maybe because of other thoughts that and whatever, but we have to find out the original thoughts, which would be able to at least to have a more or less clear reference, an indication that this could be the beginning of it, and not really to go from the place that you're now into changing something, but rather to go back and start tracking back the steps of this manifestation. Otherwise, it's really hard, in my opinion, to do anything about any fear if you do not know what is the origins of it. Because there's many ways of how to not be afraid, but really the one of the most effective ways to deal with the fear is to face it. It's always to face what you're afraid of, and in this case is to face the thought that produces the fear of hurting the body, because there's no actual thing like a snake or whatever that you would be afraid of that you could face and really see what produces that fear. So right now the thought, it has to be faced and really taken into clear vision to see what is surrounding that thought, what is the energy around that thought. All of this has to have some origin for the beginning of identification with the fear. Otherwise, a thought of hurting the body is just a thought. Now, which thoughts surrounds that thought to produce the fear and actually identification with that. As any other thought will not mean anything if it doesn't have the supporting thoughts to produce the reality of that thought. But even though the reality of that thought is really questionable because it's only real because of other thoughts telling you to be real. So what is real if all the thoughts are what remains real if the thought that you are afraid of is surrounded by other thoughts, and all of the thoughts are noticed to be merely thoughts, not reasonable to carry them around if they don't have any legit substance to it other than just a thought. And perhaps this would be the way to really to take into consideration this question. Otherwise, I wouldn't even go in any other ways of how to change this. Just to take a look and face the thought, and face what surrounds this thought and what produces that kind of a experience of a fear.